Oasis Audio presents The Story Hunter, The Weaver Trilogy, Book 3, by Lindsay A. Franklin. Read for you by Pam Turlow. Chapter 1. Tanwen. I stood before the capital city of Urian, unable to breathe. Wispy strands of pearl-gray sorrow cascaded from my hands and pooled on the ground. The city, the one I'd spent most of my young life dreaming about, hadn't been all I'd hoped for. That was true. It hadn't fulfilled me and my desires the way I'd once fantasized it would. But it had been my home for a while. It had been the place where I'd rediscovered my father, alive after 13 years apart. The place where we had triumphed over a tyrant, where Braith had rightly been crowned queen, and where I'd thought my future might lie. And now, it was enveloped in chaos. People poured through the cobblestone streets and packed dirt alleyways. Peasants, the merchant class, soldiers with uniforms in various states of disarray. Nobles, even. I watched as a lady in a fine dress stumbled over the rubbish strewn about the street. She cried out as she hit the ground. Half a moment later, 3 peasants were upon her, ripping at her fine clothing and jewelry. Before she could scream again, my father stood over her, his sword drawn and his eyes ablaze. "You'll not harm her." Surely the peasants didn't recognize him on sight. The former first general of Tyr was famous by name, not looks, among the peasant class. But his sword spoke clearly enough. That was a language we all understood. They released the fallen lady and took a few steps backward. Father nodded to the rest of us. The knot of weavers from the Corsyth, standing frozen in shock or horror. I felt as though I'd sprouted roots into the street. I knew the lady needed assistance. The danger from the rioters pressed in on me like a black cloud of dark magic, and the heat from a nearby shop, awash in flame, warmed my back in the most unpleasant way. Yet I couldn't seem to move. Moore did instead. He hurried to Father's side and bent beside the weeping, trembling woman. "Come on now. Let me help you up." She hesitated, and I could hardly blame her. We had traveled from the port city of Fisgat to Urian at top speed, stopping only to tuck our injured comrade Aaron safely away in our Corsyth hideaway, with Carlith as her nurse. And we'd been moons at sea. Though our ship was commissioned by the Queen and we were all legitimate sailors in the eyes of the law, Moore looked every bit the ruffian pirate at the moment. After a pause, the lady glanced at Father's blade, still poised protectively between her and the peasant attackers. Then she accepted Moore's hand. He led her safely behind Father toward the rest of us. Father turned his attention back to the would-be muggers. "Now what in the name of the Queen has happened here?" "We have no queen," one hissed. Her gaze wandered to the lady, who shrank closer to Moore's side, and her eyes lit up with greed. "There ain't no such thing as the nobility anymore. What's hers is mine." Zealot stepped forward, his height imposing despite his thin frame. "That ain't how it works, last I checked. What's happened to this place? What's happened to Queen Braith?" Another of the peasants, a lad no older than 15, sneered. "We don't answer to you or him," he said, as he thrust his chin at Father. Though I didn't fail to notice, he took several steps away from Father's blade before he decided to be so bold. "Get out of here!" Wormel suddenly shouted, and the peasants scattered. To say the former guardsman captain was on edge was an understatement. Aaron was his lass, and he'd been none too pleased to leave her behind in the Corsyth, even though he knew she couldn't travel with us. She was still recovering from losing a leg in the battle that had sunk our ship, the Satharel. Dylan's grip tightened on a wooden box in his hands. He shook his head. "I don't like this at all." Father lowered his weapon, though he didn't return it to its sheath. He turned to the rattled noblewoman. "My lady, can you tell us what happened?" "Those beasts! Animals!" Her voice
Sample complete. Ready to continue?